Welcome back to the next installment on the Sdkfz 251/9. Got the clear coat on. I have the tracks on. So I'm pretty much ready to do the decals. However, before I get going on that, I need to add a mount for the 50 caliber machine gun that the British added for this vehicle. So I dug around in the parts box and I came up with this 50 caliber and ammo box from a British tank that I built. It's leftover parts. So I'm going to use this to make the M250 caliber. And then what I will do is, this was in the kit as well, and it is a post mount type deal. So where it's going to go in the vehicle, I can't tell really from the photograph or from the illustration exactly where it goes, so I'm just going to have to use common sense here, and you would have to clear the seat, so it's going to have to go somewhere right in here. So what I'm going to do is it's going to be mounted, right in here on the sidewall, like it was bolted or welded in place. So I'm going to have to do is modify that that base. So I'm going to cut the post part off and just basically leave the base plate. Then I have some round evergreen tubing that's about the perfect diameter, matches the diameter of this piece that's on the base plate. So I'll just cut it at an angle, cement it in place at the correct angle so it's sticking up out of the vehicle, and I can mount the machine gun. I also have an actual mount that goes on the top of the post as well. It's in my bag of spares here. Just need to fish it out right there. So I'll be using that. So anyway, I'm going to work on that for a little bit, and then once I kind of get that hashed out and get it ready for installation, before I do the installation, I'll do the decals and then the weathering, and that'll probably be the last thing I do, but just kind of wanted to fill you in on what that was going to be. So let me work on that a bit, and then I will come back and do the decals. Alright, so here I am back. I got the mount made, as you can see here. And this really worked out good because this tubing that I used, evergreen styrene tubing, was the exact size, as I said, for this down here. And also is the exact size on the internal dimension, and allowed a bit of a lip for this mount here, so it just worked out really well. Now, I had second thoughts on the mounting point, because originally I was going to mount it over here. But in looking at the photograph, I tilted the vehicle up to a similar angle as the photograph, and from what I can see and just through deduction, it's more mounted about right in here somewhere. You know, again, the seat still has to clear it, but it's about right there, because it looks like, you know, when I put it in place and held it there, it kind of lined up more with my photo. So again, it's just an educated guess, but about right there is where it's going to be. So anyway, that's going to be probably the last thing I do. I'll weather this whenever I weather everything else, and then that'll be the last thing I install, so I don't break it off, because it will be kind of fragile, as they say in the Italian. So anyway, so as you can see, I've also got the decals installed. Not very many of them. A star on each side, the large star on the engine cover here. Now, according to the instructions, it notes that this decal and these two decals here on the front, those are the supposed area that would be, because there's no photograph showing exactly where they are. But going off of the way that British vehicles are, normally marked, they assume that's where it would be, and that's where that would be. But we do know from the photograph that this one is here on each side, and then these are on the back, the unit markings. So those are in place and ready to go. As you can see, probably I've got the wash has been done. And for that, like usual, I used Vallejo model wash, and I always dilute this 50-50 with Vallejo thinner, which I put in this little bottle just for ease of dripping. So that's what I use to do the wash. So the next part I'm going to do is I think I'm going to seal it with a flat. Oh, I also forgot to rust this muffler here. I just painted it like everything else. At first I thought it was probably some kind of an air filter or something, and then common sense prevailed. That's the exhaust and the muffler. So I put a rust coat on there, roughed it up. There's a little bit of paint left on it. So I have Vallejo model wash rust coming in that I want to try out, and I'll be using that to brighten that up just slightly. And I don't want it to be real orange. Sometimes they look a little orange, and I'm going to sample a little bit on the bottom, and I may even just leave it like this. It's more of a brownish color, which might be a little bit better, but I'll do that. I painted a little bit of detail painting here on the breech block. I need to, apparently the seat is metal. According to the instructions, it says to paint that gunmetal, so I'm assuming that it was painted and then just wore off from a person sitting on it. So I'm going to do a little bit of metallic weathering on that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on doing the flat coat, I believe. And once I get that done, then I can start on the actual weathering portion of it. Okay, at this point, I have applied the wash. I have started working on some weathering. I just did the tires. I'm going to let that dry really well before I move on, and so that'll begin the weathering of that. I've got the tools have been painted with the base coat. I'm going to do a little bit of wood showing through on the handles, and then paint some worn metal on the ends of the pick and on the axe, because I want to make these look like they were painted on the vehicle, like they didn't bother to take them off. Same with the fire extinguisher. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow chipping along the edges, but I'm just going to use the old traditional method with a brush. Just very little bit of chipping along the edges of the the bottom and the highlighted edges, and then I'll add some like some warm metal look. I'll take care of that. Then I've got a couple of stowage items I'm working on here, some tarps I'm going to have on the inside of the vehicle. The machine gun mount and machine gun is completed. I need to do a black wash on this, and then do a little bit of light weathering, maybe chip the edges a little bit on the ammo box. And then on the fuel can, I'm putting a couple of fuel cans, and I got these were in the I think, I can't remember what it was called, Allied stowage kit or something like that. I purchased recently. I did a video on it recently if you want to check it out. But I put a base coat of a German gray on here, and then I'm going to paint it with I'm going to put some hairspray on it and then paint it Decals, the German yellow, and then I'll do some hairspray chipping technique around some of the edges, like these are well used cans, because these are also going to be in the vehicle. and that should, you know, conclude all my, you know, stowage items and stuff. So I'm going to work a little bit more on that and come back and show you what I've got. I've got some more weathering done on this thing, and where I left off is I did the front wheels, and as you can see, they turned out pretty dandy. Just an accumulation of dirt and dust in the tread pattern and on the sidewalls. I've done the same treatment to all of this, but you might be able to see that it's still wet, because I just did this. I did this last night and just did this now, so that's got to dry. So I did both sides and did some up underneath the fenders, so it'll look like it's, you know, got some road grime on it. A little bit on the back fenders right here. Once it dries, you'll be able to see it better. So I got that. So I have to let that dry, and then once that dries, then I can actually start weathering the rest of the vehicle. Now for those tracks and wheels, what I used was Vallejo pigment light sienna and the pigment binder. The pigment binder I got one of the weathering sets for US vehicles, and it came with these little small bottles of pretty much the same stuff I've got in my washes. These are just small, so they're kind of handy, especially this, because, you know, it's a dropper bottle and I can put drops in. But all I did was I took one of these little cups here, and I put about 5 drops of pigment binder and then a couple of scoops with this brush of the pigment in there, and stirred it up really well to where it was, trying to think what consistency it was. It's thicker than milk, but it wasn't chunky. It wouldn't hold a peak if you were to put it on something. It's just really thick liquid, almost like cough medicine or something, I guess, maybe. But what that did is it was fluid enough that I was able to basically paint it on and get it in all the nooks and crannies, but it's thick enough that it has a bit of texture and a splotchy appearance. I don't think you'd be able to get the same effect with paint of a similar color. It just wouldn't work. So that's what I did. It's just a really thick liquid, and it just, you know, goes on there really nice. As you can see, is right there. It's like you can't even see it right now. It's just totally transparent. But once it dries, it will be like that right there. So it'll look really nice. But that's what I used for that. And then for the I also did the fuel cans. I mentioned those in my little last segment. What I did is I painted them. First I used, let's see, which color did I use? I used Tamiya German Gray. I used that for a base coat. I didn't prime it or anything. I just sprayed it directly on there. I was kind of experimenting. So I used this German Gray XF63 for a base coat. I let that dry overnight. Then I used this bottle of pump hairspray, Bounce Back Hold Ultra Strong Hold number 4 with natural bamboo extract. See, I think that was the trick with this. Natural bamboo extract. I'm kidding. But I sent my daughter to the store and said, get me some really cheap hairspray and a pump bottle. And this is what she brought me back. So I thought, I'm going to try it. And all I did was put it in my airbrush, spray it on there. I let it dry, and it doesn't take long for hairspray to dry. And it's easy to clean up. And then I gave it a coat of the famous Tamiya XF60 dark yellow. So I used that on top of that, let that dry for a while, and then just took some water and this little It's a Moria number 25 white Taklon brush, number 5, that I've had for probably 30 years. And I cut it off long ago to use for dry brushing, mainly metallics, like on tracks and stuff like that. But you know, it does double duty. So I just, you know, did the hairspray method, just scrubbed and got some nice, really nice chipping. And I like the way that the Tamiya paint and this Garnier Fructose style number 4 Ultra Stronghold worked. It worked really nice. I like the way it came out. It looks scale size chipping. So those are going to go in the vehicle. So I got those done. I think I mentioned last time the machine gun's done, ready to go. The tools, I did some more work on the tools, and basically what I did with those is I just sprayed them the overall green color of the vehicle, and then using a small piece of sponge and the color I normally use for wood, which is Vallejo Flat Earth. I like using that for wood. It's not too reddish brown like some handles I've seen. Just looks a little bit better, especially once it's weathered a little bit. So I use that to create some like worn spots. You probably can't, it's really subtle, you probably can't even see it in this video, but I use it to create some worn spots, like, you know, the troops using the tools and wearing the green paint off. And then use some graphite to highlight the working edge of the tools to make it look like bare metal. So I did that with the pick and the axe. So those are ready to go. Fire extinguisher, it has been chipped up using the sponge as well. So it's got a little bit of wear to it. And then I worked on these tarps, blankets, whatever they are, covers, to go inside of here. This one here, it's actually made to go, I've had this one forever, and it was actually curved like this to, I believe it was to fit on the fender of a half track, like an M3 half track. But I've had it forever, and I like the way it kind of hangs down, because that is going to go on the inside. Whoops. On the inside, right there, on top of that storage box, and kind of hang off the end, just to, you know, add a personal touch to the inside of it. And in this one here, don't know what that came from. It's a really old one. I recently cleaned out my spare parts container to get some of this stuff, so I did that. And then these fuel cans, both these fuel cans are going to go inside of here like that for some stowage. So that is what those parts are for. So that's up to this point. So the next, once this all dries, the tracks and everything dry, and I get these attached, then I'm going to do some of the rougher weathering on the outside of the vehicle. Once I attach the tools, I'll be attaching the tools here pretty quick. And then the second to last thing I'll do is I'll install this inside where I had pointed out earlier in the videos. I'll install that, and then I will do the light, like dusting of the whole vehicle, and it should be pretty much done. So with that, I'm going to call it an end to this segment, this video. And as always, leave comments or questions below, and stay tuned for the next video, which will probably be a short one, just showing the quick weathering and some of that, and then the final reveal will come up. So as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will catch you all next time.